First Contact Protocol. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hung suspended in the void between stars, a crystalline sphere that refracted the light of 1,000 distant suns into prismatic cascades across its translucent walls. Within its vast interior, representatives from 47 species gathered in concentric rings, their various forms of communication, sonic, chemical, electromagnetic, and quantum, translated instantaneously by the ancient AI that governed council proceedings. Today, however, the usual orderly discourse had dissolved into something uncomfortably close to panic. Ambassador Zekthor of the Valkyrie Collective adjusted his sensory stalks nervously, the bioluminescent patterns across his carapace flickering amber with anxiety. In his 3 centuries of diplomatic service, he had never witnessed such disorder in the chamber. Species that had maintained cold diplomatic distance for millennia now huddled together in unprecedented alliances, their representatives exchanging data streams with frantic urgency. Order. The voice of High Arbiter Quexlon boomed through the chamber, resonating in frequencies that transcended mere sound. The ancient crystallid's form pulsed with authoritative light, demanding attention. We cannot allow fear to compromise our judgment. This council has faced extinction events, dimensional rifts, and the plague of unmaking. Surely we can address this matter with rationality. Rationality, chittered Ambassador Silith, her insectoid form trembling. When you speak of rationality when they have breached the quarantine, when the single most dangerous species in known space has finally decided our containment measures are insufficient? A wave of agreement rippled through the assembly. Zekthor felt it in his bones, the primal fear that united every species present, regardless of their evolutionary path or philosophical differences. The Terrans, someone whispered, and the name seemed to suck the energy from the room. High Arbiter Quexlon's crystalline form dimmed momentarily, the closest his species could come to expressing dread. Yes, after 512 standard cycles of containment, the humans have left their quarantine zone. Detection Grid 7 Theta registered their vessel 3 solar days ago, moving at velocities that should be impossible for their technological level. Zekthor accessed his neural database, pulling up the classified files he'd only skimmed during his diplomatic training. Every council ambassador was required to study the Terran protocols, but most treated it as an academic exercise, a historical curiosity about a primitive species confined to the far edge of the Orion Arm. Few believed humanity would ever pose a real threat to galactic stability. They had been catastrophically wrong. The data stream flooded his consciousness. Species designation, Homo sapiens. Origin, Earth. Sol System, Sector 001 Theta. Classification, Death World Apex Predator. Threat Level, Existential. Recommended Action, Permanent Quarantine. But it was the subsections that made Zekthor's chromatophores flash pale blue with terror. Warning, species exhibits unprecedented levels of aggression, adaptability, and resilience. Biological analysis indicates evolution in a Class 12 Death World environment, with multiple mass extinction events. Psychology profile suggests pathological persistence, pack bonding behavior across species barriers, and a disturbing tendency towards creative problem-solving under extreme duress. Critical. Humans possess no natural telepathic or empathic abilities, allowing them to lie, deceive, and strategize without psychic detection. This trait alone makes them uniquely dangerous in galactic society where truth sensing is universal. Extreme caution. Species demonstrates pursuit predator evolutionary background, will track prey across impossible distances and timeframes. Historical records show humans once hunted megafauna to exhaustion over multi-day pursuits. This mentality extends to all problem-solving scenarios. The historical records must be exaggerated, Zekthor had thought when first reading them. Now with a human vessel approaching council space, those words felt like wishful thinking. 500 years earlier,
Survey ship Infinite Curiosity had been conducting a routine stellar cartography mission when navigator Tixnall detected the unusual electromagnetic signatures emanating from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow dwarf star. "Captain, I'm reading organized radio transmissions," Tixnall reported, his whiskers twitching with excitement. "It appears we've discovered another technological civilization." "Excellent. Begin standard observation protocols. Let's see what kind of neighbors we found." Captain Vormis, a seasoned explorer who had made first contact with 17 species during her distinguished career, felt the familiar thrill of discovery. The Infinite Curiosity spent 3 standard months in the outer system, observing Earth from a distance while compiling a comprehensive database on its dominant species. What they discovered would change galactic civilization forever. "Captain," Science Officer Pelthar announced during a routine briefing, her voice unusually strained, "I need you to review these biological scans personally. I've run them through the analysis matrix 14 times because I couldn't believe the results." Vormis studied the holographic display, her confusion growing with each data point. "These readings can't be correct. This planet's gravity is nearly twice the galactic standard. The atmospheric oxygen content is in the toxic range for most species. The temperature variations alone would be classified as a Class 9 hazard." "That's just the beginning," Pelthar continued, highlighting various data streams. "The planet has experienced at least 5 major extinction events in its geological history. The current biosphere is recovering from an ice age that ended only 12,000 local years ago. The microbial life is extraordinarily aggressive. I've cataloged over 7,000 distinct pathogens that would be lethal to most galactic species." "And the dominant species evolved in this environment?" Vormis felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. "Not just evolved, Captain," Pelthar continued. "They thrived. Humans are pursuit predators. They literally ram their prey to death across vast distances. Their cardiovascular system is designed for sustained effort over hours or even days. They have virtually no natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no armored hide, yet they became the apex predator of a death world by simply refusing to stop." Pelthar brought up another display. "But it gets worse. Look at their psychological profile. They form pack bonds not just with their own species, but with other species entirely. They've domesticated predators and prey animals alike, integrating them into their social structures. They create emotional attachments to anything, plants, machines, even abstract concepts. And once bonded, they will fight to the death to protect what they consider theirs." The bridge fell silent as the implications settled over the crew. "Their military history," Pelthar continued relentlessly, "shows a species that has been in a state of near-constant warfare for its entire recorded civilization. They've developed over 40,000 distinct ways to kill each other. But here's what terrifies me, Captain. Despite all that conflict, they keep advancing. Every war drives innovation. Every setback makes them more determined. They don't just survive catastrophe, they weaponize the lessons learned from it." Navigator Tixnall reviewed his own data with growing horror. "Captain, I've been analyzing their early space program. They strapped themselves to controlled chemical explosions and rode them into orbit. Dozens died in the attempt, and they just kept going. They planted a flag on their moon using computers less powerful than our personal data pads. Their determination borders on insanity." Vormis stared at the rotating image of Earth, suddenly seeing it not as a beautiful blue jewel, but as a forge that had hammered humanity into something unprecedented in galactic history. "We need to contact the Council immediately, and we need to recommend quarantine protocols." The recommendation was accepted unanimously within 6 standard days, the fastest Council decision in recorded history. Present day, the breach. "The human vessel is transmitting," High Arbiter Quexlon announced, interrupting Zektor's review of the historical files. "They're using standard galactic frequencies and protocols. They know we're here. They've known all along." The chamber erupted in chaos again. Zektor felt his internal organs clench with instinctive dread. 500 years of quarantine? of carefully maintained isolation, and the humans had been aware the entire time? What are they saying? Ambassador Silith demanded. They're requesting permission to dock, Quexlon replied, his crystalline form flickering with emotions too complex for translation. They say they've come to talk about their membership application to the Galactic Council. The sheer audacity of it stunned the assembly into silence. They can't be serious, someone muttered. They're human. They're always serious, even when they shouldn't be. Zekthor found himself speaking before he'd consciously decided to volunteer. I'll go. Someone has to make contact, and it might as well be someone who's actually read the Terran files thoroughly. High Arbiter Quexlon focused his attention on Zekthor. Are you certain, Ambassador? The psychological profiles suggest. I know what they suggest, Zekthor interrupted, his chromatophores flashing determined green. But if we don't meet with them, they'll just keep coming. That's what humans do. They persist.
The truth revealed. Captain Sarah Chen stood and walked to the viewport, her silhouette framed against the star-scattered darkness beyond. Zekthor watched her with the careful attention his species had evolved for tracking potential threats, an irony not lost on him, given that humans had perfected that same skill to a terrifying degree. Before we begin, Chen said without turning, I want you to access your personal database and pull up file designation Terra Historical Compilation 001. It's a gift from us. We've been monitoring your communication networks for quite some time. Don't look so shocked, Ambassador. Your encryption is clever but not impenetrable. And we noticed some inaccuracies in your species profiles on humanity. Zekthor's chromatophores flickered through several colors of indignation before settling on cautious curiosity. He accessed the file, and his neural interface immediately flooded with data. Not the dry, clinical observations of the original survey team, but something far more comprehensive, a complete historical record of humanity from the perspective of humans themselves. What you're about to see, Chen continued, finally turning to face him, is context. The Council looked at us and saw monsters, apex predators from a death world too dangerous to integrate into civilized society. And you know what? You weren't entirely wrong, but you weren't entirely right either. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Earth as it had been 65 million years ago. A massive asteroid struck the planet with apocalyptic force. The Cretaceous Paleogenic extinction event, Chen narrated, 75% of all species on Earth died. The dominant life forms, massive reptilian creatures you might find in your xenobiology databases, were wiped out almost entirely. But small mammals survived in the ruins, our ancestors. The display fast-forwarded through millennia, showing the rise and fall of ice ages, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, and periods of climate chaos that would have sterilized most worlds. Every few million years, something tried to kill everything on our planet, Chen said matter-of-factly, and every time life found a way. Not because Earth is kind, it's not, but because the survivors were adaptable. The ones who could eat different foods, live in different environments, work together to overcome impossible odds. That's what evolution on a death world teaches you, Zekthor. It teaches you that the only way to survive is to refuse to die. Zekthor watched as early hominids appeared in the fossil record, struggling against predators far larger and more naturally armed than themselves. But you had no claws. No venom, no natural armor. How did you become apex predators? Chen's smile was proud. We outlasted them. There was a prey animal on our planet, ancestors of modern deer. Faster than us, more agile, better senses. By every metric, they should have escaped us easily. But my ancestors would track one for days. Not hours, Ambassador, days. They would follow it through forests and across plains, never stopping, never giving up. The prey would run until its muscles literally broke down, until it couldn't take another step. Then our ancestors would walk up and finish it with simple stone tools. She paused, letting that sink in. We call it persistence hunting. You call it nightmare fuel. The display shifted to show early human civilizations. Zekthor saw cities rising and falling, empires expanding and collapsing, endless cycles of conflict and cooperation. Your files mention our military history, Chen continued, all those thousands of ways we've invented to kill each other. And it's true, we've been fighting amongst ourselves for our entire recorded history. But here's what your analyst missed. We've also been cooperating on a scale that should be impossible for a non-telepathic species. She gestured, and the display showed the construction of the Great Pyramids, the Great Wall, massive cathedrals that took centuries to complete. We built these without any individual living to see them finished.
generation after generation working towards a goal they'd never personally achieve. We created art, music, literature, philosophy. We looked at the stars and didn't just wonder what was out there, we became obsessed with finding out. That same persistence that made us terrifying hunters also made us insatiable learners. Zekthor's database continued to populate with information. He saw human wars, yes, but also saw the International Space Station, competing nations working together in orbit. He saw the Voyager probes carrying messages to potential alien civilizations. He saw humans diving to the deepest ocean trenches, climbing the highest mountains, exploring every hostile environment their planet could offer. You want to know what really makes humans dangerous? Chen asked softly. It's not our physical capabilities or our aggression. It's that we don't know when to quit. Every species in the galaxy has a rational survival instinct. When something is too dangerous, too costly, too impossible, they stop and find another way. Humans? We laugh at impossible as a challenge. 24 hours later, Council Station Primus. The arrival of the indomitable spirit at the galaxy's most secure diplomatic facility had been met with unprecedented security measures. 50 warships surrounded the station, their weapons powered but not locked. Everyone agreed that threatening humans was pointless. If they wanted violence, it would come regardless. But the show of force made the council members feel slightly less helpless. High Arbitrate Quexlin had reluctantly agreed to allow a delegation of 5 humans aboard the station for a formal presentation. Ambassador Zekthor, having survived his initial encounter, had been assigned as their primary liaison, a duty he accepted with the resigned courage of someone who had already stared into the abyss and lived to tell the tale. Captain Chen led the human delegation through the crystalline corridors of the station, and Zekthor noticed with grim satisfaction that every one of his colleagues was having the same reaction he had had, instinctive, primal fear at the way humans moved. They walked with an economy of motion that spoke of predatory efficiency, their eyes constantly scanning, assessing, cataloging threats and opportunities. The Grand Chamber had been reconfigured for human environmental requirements, a decision that had sparked considerable debate. The gravity was still uncomfortably high for most species, and the oxygen content made several representatives lightheaded. Humans, naturally, seemed perfectly comfortable. Honored members of the Galaxy Council, Captain Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know many of you would prefer we remained in quarantine indefinitely. Some of you probably wish we'd never developed space travel at all. I understand that fear. I'm here to tell you why it's both completely rational and ultimately unnecessary. She gestured, and a holographic human appeared at the center of the chamber, anatomically correct and slowly rotating for examination. Let's start with the basics. Yes, we evolved on a death world. Yes, our planet tried to kill us repeatedly, and we responded by getting harder to kill. Our cardiovascular system can sustain intense physical activity for hours. Our immune system is a military-grade defense network that treats every foreign microbe as a potential existential threat. We heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. We consume mild poisons for recreation and call it alcohol or coffee. Nervous rustling spread through the assembly. We don't have telepathy, which means we can lie without detection. We can deceive, manipulate, and strategize behind psychological walls that telepathic species find disturbing. Our emotions are intense and often irrational by galactic standards. We bond with anything, our families, our pets, our machines, abstract concepts like freedom and justice. Once we've bonded with something, we'll fight to protect it with a ferocity that borders on madness. Chen paused, letting the chamber absorb this. All of this is true, she continued, but here's what your psychological profiles missed. These same traits that make us dangerous also make us valuable. A new holographic display emerged, showing human disaster response teams. Zekthor watched as humans ran into burning buildings, dove into turbulent waters, climbed treacherous mountains to rescue complete strangers. That pack bonding instinct you find so threatening? Chen said, it means we'll die for our teammates. That persistence you consider insane? It means we don't abandon problems just because they're difficult. Our emotional intensity? It drives us to create art that moves souls, to fight for justice even when it's personally costly, to reach for dreams that more rational species dismiss as impossible. She switched to footage of the Mars colonies, thriving biodomes on humanity's second planet. We've been watching your broadcast for 500 years, learning your languages, studying your cultures. Do you know what we noticed? You're also careful. You calculate risks to 17 decimal places before attempting anything new. You form committees to study whether you need committees. Your wars end in negotiated settlements because the cost-benefit analysis eventually favors peace. Chen's expression grew serious. There's nothing wrong with that. It's rational. It's civilized. But that also means there are problems you can't solve, threats you can't face, risks you can't take. Ambassador Silith, unable to contain herself, interjected with a burst of agitated clicking. Are you suggesting we need your violence? Your reckless disregard for survival instincts? No, Chen replied calmly. I'm suggesting that sometimes the galaxy needs someone who's too stupid to quit. Someone who looks at a problem everyone else has decided is insurmountable and says, "Hold my beer." Zekthor's translator struggled with that last phrase, just as his training materials had warned. Chen smiled at the confusion. Hold my beer is a human expression. It means, I'm about to attempt something incredibly dangerous and possibly stupid, but watch me do it anyway. It's the phrase that preceded some of our greatest achievements and our most spectacular failures. She brought up a new image, a human in a primitive spacesuit standing on Earth's moon. This is Neil Armstrong. When he stepped on our moon, the computer guiding his landing craft had less processing power than the devices you use to check your personal messages. The life support system was held together with what we literally call duct tape. The odds of success were calculated at around 60%. Any went anyway, because someone had to be first. Because humanity looked at the impossible distance between Earth and our moon and said, "Hold my beer." More images flowed. The Hubble Space Telescope, repaired by humans in spacesuits who risked everything in the vacuum. The International Space Station, built piece by people in tin cans, held together by cooperation and stubbornness. The first human ship to reach another star system, achieved decades before Council models predicted. We're not asking to be welcomed into the Council because we're safe. We're not safe. We're asking because the galaxy isn't safe either, and eventually you're going to face something that can't be negotiated.